I was only trying to help, Amina tried to explain, her voice trembling. I found her in the bush. She was in pain. I didn't know what to do, but the villagers didn't listen. The more Amina tried to explain, the angrier they got. The story changed and grew with every telling. Some said she had used the woman for a money ritual, just to renew her father's wealth. Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived a young girl named Amina. She was a very beautiful and clever girl. Her father, Gogo, was the wealthiest farmer in the village, loved by everyone for his kind heart. When Gogo passed away, Amina, who was his only child, inherited all his wealth and his big farm. Amina's mother had died when she was very little, so she was all alone in her big house. But she was not lonely. She had the whole village as her family. Gogo was a man who believed in sharing his blessings. He would give away half of his farm's produce to people who had less. After Gogo passed away, Amina continued doing the same. She was just like her father, kind and generous. Every time the farm had a harvest, she made sure the villagers got their share, especially the old men and women who couldn't work anymore. Amina wasn't just kind by giving away food and her farm produce. She was also kind in small ways, like smiling, listening to others, and helping out. Everyone in the village loved Amina because she was different from other wealthy people. She was humble and down to earth. She didn't act like she was better than anyone else. Instead, she would spend her free time with other girls of the village, chatting and playing like she was one of them. The villagers loved her not just because she gave them things, but because she was one of them at heart. People would often say, "Look at Amina. She's just like her father, Gogo, so kind and giving." And Amina would just smile and continue doing her good work. She believed that if you have the means to help, you should. Little did she know that her grandmother had some wise words of caution for her, words that would soon change the way she saw the world. One sunny day, Amina went to visit her grandmother. Her grandmother was old and wise, with many stories and lessons from her long life. As they sat under a big tree outside her hut, her grandmother looked at Amina with a serious look in her eyes. "Amina," her grandmother said, "you are just like your father, always ready to help. But I must tell you something important." Amina listened carefully as her grandmother continued, "It's good to be kind, but you must be careful. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend." Her grandmother then told her an old saying, "People love heroes, but what they love more than heroes is seeing the hero fall." Amina looked puzzled, so her grandmother explained, "I told the same thing to your father, Gogo. Being too kind can sometimes bring trouble. Some people might take advantage of your kindness or even become jealous." Amina thought about this for a moment, but she couldn't imagine anyone in her village being unkind to her. "I understand, Grandma," Amina replied, "but I believe that if I can help, I should. That's what makes our village strong. We help each other." Her grandmother nodded, knowing Amina was just as stubborn as her father. Just remember, not all help is good help. Sometimes the best help is teaching others to stand on their own. Amina hugged her grandmother, promising to be careful, but deep down, she still believed in her father's way, to help wherever and whenever she could. Little did Amina know, her grandmother's words would soon echo in her life in a way she never expected. One evening, as Amina was walking home through a quiet path, she heard a cry for help coming from the bush. Her heart raced as she followed the sound and found a woman lying on the ground, in pain. The woman was pregnant, and it looked like her baby was coming soon. Without a second thought, Amina rushed to help. She remembered watching the village midwives and tried to do what they did, but things were not going well. The woman was losing a lot of blood, and Amina didn't know how to stop it. She was scared, but kept trying to help, hoping she could save both the mother and her baby. As the sun began to set, the woman's cries grew weaker. So Amina decided to take her to the village. As Amina tried to help the woman to the midwife's house, just as they stepped into the village, in front of everybody in the village square, the woman suddenly collapsed. Amina shouted for help, but by the time others came, the woman was not moving. Amina felt her heart sink as the woman stopped moving. She was covered in blood, her hands shaking. She didn't know what to do. She had tried to help, but now the woman lay cold on the ground looking like she was dead. Amina was in shock. She had wanted to be a hero, to save the day, like her father always did. But now, she stood alone in the middle of the village, with her hands covered in blood, and the pregnant woman not moving. The villagers, in shock and fear, started whispering. "She's dead," someone said. "Amina killed her." One person whispered that Amina had hurt the woman. Another said she was a witch. The word spread like wildfire. "Amina is a witch," they said. "She brought bad luck upon the woman." Amina couldn't believe her ears. These were the same people she had grown up with, helped and cared for. How could they think so ill of her? The villagers, who have been benefactors from Amina's father's farm, now looked at her like she was a stranger. All of a sudden, the once generous Amina had become dangerous in their faces. "I was only trying to help," Amina tried to explain, her voice trembling. "I found her in the bush. She was in pain. I didn't know what to do." But the villagers didn't listen. The more Amina tried to explain, the angrier they got. The story changed and grew with every telling. Some said she had used the woman for a money ritual, just to renew her father's wealth. Others said she was cursed since no woman had died in childbirth in the village since Amina's own birth. Amina stood in the middle of the crowd feeling alone and scared. She had always seen the best in her village, but now she saw something else, fear and suspicion. It was like a dark cloud had covered the sun, and the warmth she had always felt in her village was gone. She remembered her grandmother's warning and wished she had listened. As the accusations grew, the villagers decided to take Amina to the king for judgment. Amina walked with her head down, her heart heavy with sadness and disbelief. The kind girl who had always been a hero in the village was now being treated like a villain. This was a betrayal she never saw coming. The angry villagers dragged Amina to the king's palace. The king, an old man with a kind face, had known Amina since she was a child. He had seen her grow up into a kind and generous young woman. But now, as the villagers told their stories, his face grew serious. The villagers spoke loudly, their words filled with fear and anger. "She killed the woman," one said. "She's a witch," another added. The king listened, his eyes moving from the villagers to Amina. She stood there, her clothes still stained with blood, looking small and scared. The king knew Amina's heart and knew she was good and kind. But the villagers were scared, and their fear was turning into anger. The king thought about what was best for the village. He had to keep peace, even if it meant making a hard choice. "Amina," the king said, his voice heavy, "you are accused of a great crime. The tradition of our land says that anyone who takes a life must face punishment. He or she will be prosecuted." Amina's heart sank. She looked into the king's eyes, hoping he would see the truth. But the king looked away. "I didn't do it," Amina whispered, but her voice was lost in the shouts of the crowd. She felt alone, surrounded by the angry faces of people she once called friends and family. She remembered her grandmother's words. People love heroes, but what they love more than heroes is seeing the hero fall. It was all happening just as her grandmother had warned. Her world was crashing down, and there was nothing she could do. She never understood those words until now. The same people she had helped were now calling for her punishment. The king ordered Amina to be held until her fate could be decided. She was led away, her head down, her heart broken. The kindness she had always believed in had turned against her. In the eyes of her village, she was no longer a hero, but a villain. This was a lesson Amina would never forget. But just as all hope seemed lost, an unexpected voice came to her rescue. As the villagers were about to take Amina away, the midwife hurried into the palace, out of breath. "Stop!" she cried. "The woman is alive. She just fainted because she lost a lot of blood." A hush fell over the crowd. The midwife explained that the woman had given birth to a healthy baby and was resting in her house. After the truth came out, the villagers looked at each other, shame written on their faces. They had been so quick to accuse Amina, the same girl who had always been there for them. One by one, they apologized for their hasty judgments and harsh words. "We were wrong," they said. "Please forgive us." Amina listened quietly, her eyes reflecting a mix of forgiveness and deep thought. But she never said a word that day. She just walked away from the crowd. Then one evening, the villagers gathered around Amina, as they used to, but this time it was different. Amina stood before them, a calm and wise look on her face. "I forgive you all," she began, her voice gentle yet firm. "But we must learn from this. Being kind is good, but we must also be wise." Amina spoke about the importance of balance in helping others. "Kindness is like a river that should flow, but with caution," she said. "We should help, but also think about how and when we help. It's not just about giving what we can. It's also about understanding what's truly needed." That day, if I had run to the village to call the midwives, instead of trying to help all by myself, the situation might have been different. The villagers listened, their faces showing understanding and respect. Amina talked about setting limits to kindness. "We can't pour from an empty cup," she explained. "As we care for others, we must care for ourselves too, in the best way possible." Amina's experience had changed her, but it didn't harden her heart. Instead, she became more thoughtful in her generosity. She still helped the villagers, but now she did it in ways that were more careful and considered. She involved others in her decisions, encouraging them to be part of the solution. Her approach to kindness became a lesson for the entire village. People started to think more about how they helped each other. They learned that kindness wasn't just about giving things away. It was about understanding, listening, and being there for each other in the right way. And as for Amina, her grandmother's words, "People love heroes, but what they love more than heroes is seeing the hero fall," had guided her to a deeper understanding of kindness, one that not only gives, but also builds and strengthens. She now realized that she could be kind and wise at the same time, making her world a better place in her own unique way. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell for more stories like this one. Goodbye.